Hey, lovely freaks, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Amanda.
And I'm Hannah.
And if you're new here, hi, welcome. If you like things strange and unusual and true crime, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe or follow button. You can also head down to the description box and you'll see a link that will take you to our social media like Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz.
And all that jazz.
We also want to tell you about a company that we are helping promote. The company is an Etsy shop that makes leather items such as earrings, wallets, keychains. They're going to start making luggage tags and even clutches soon. It's genuine leather. There's all different kinds of styles like modern, western, rocker style, minimalistic. And it is called Levi Royce. It is on Etsy, and if you head down to our description box, you'll see a link that will take you there. You also get 15% off when you use Lovely Freaks code at checkout. So be sure to do that and let them know, and that'll help let them know that, we sent you there. We love their earrings. Hannah wears them all the time. And I wear them. If I'm not wearing my studs, I usually have those in. So
the entire time we were on the trip, that's like every day I had a new pair of earrings. It was matching to my outfits and stuff. It was so much fun.
And it's free domestic shipping when you ship in the U.S. On purchases over $35. So yeah, be sure to check them out. The owner of the company is really awesome. He sent us a care package, and we have some of that on our Instagram as well. And we'll also post on our Instagram from this post, we'll post a link to directly go there, so it'll help you guys out as well. So if you're not following us on Instagram, you should do that. So we just came back from vacation. It was fun. We hope that you guys, were interested in what did we post last week?
It wasn't the BTK. We were thinking about doing that.
No, we were thinking about doing that, but that's a two-parter, so.
What was it?
Oh, gosh.
You told me.
Ronald
I forgot.
Doe.
Oh,
The Exorcism.
Exorcism, yeah.
So we hope that you guys, didn't enjoy it, but thought it was interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
I definitely did. And yeah, we had fun in the mountains in Gatlinburg. So today we're going to talk about sex trafficking. I know that we said that we would do like a serial killer or something like that, but Sex Trafficking Awareness Day is July 30th. Sex Trafficking Awareness Month is in January, so we're not in that month right now, but the day for the awareness is July 30th, so I thought that we'd go ahead and give some awareness because it's pretty awful. So full trigger warning, this is going to have a lot of content about kids being exploited for sexual purposes. It's going to have a lot of content about what they kind of have to go through and things like that, because there were some documentaries that I watched, and there were other things that I watched I found on TikTok, and then I just went down a rabbit hole of different websites. I'll mention them in here, but there was just a lot. U.S. State Department, I was all over that website.
Yeah, so I don't know much about sex trafficking. I was telling her. I know that my parents are always mentioning it and telling me little stories about what they do to trap girls and everything, but I don't know much about it. I really do want to know more about it, so I'm kind of interested in knowing more.
And then at the end, well, not at the end of this, but when we post this, we'll have the hotline website down there. I believe I might mention the hotline website. I think I wrote it down in my notes, but if I don't, I'll definitely post it to where you can.
Yeah, and definitely you can literally I just Googled it. I was wondering the numbers and everything, and I just Googled sex trafficking, and the number popped up right away. So all you have to do is just Google it, and it's right there.
Yeah, there's all different kinds of hotlines and things you can call. So pretty much what I'm just going to talk about are just facts. I'm just going to throw a lot of facts at you guys, and we'll kind of talk about them and go over some of them. It's estimated that 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders annually. That means every year. 80% of the victims are female, and up to 50% are children. Hundreds and thousands of women and children are used into prostitution each year. One thing I will say about the 600,000 to 800,000, not all of that is sex trafficking. Some of it is labor, like men and boys. That's usually what they do with them. They'll and I'll mention that again probably somewhere in my notes, but they use them as like labor workers and stuff like that, and they could ship them off to anywhere really, and have them work at sweatshops and stuff like that. But usually the women and the little girls are used as sex workers or prostitution or something like that. Since the beginning of 2021 now, understand me, not since like last year, since the beginning of 2021, child pornography has went up 16% in the US. A lot of that's contributed to porn sites because they're not regulated like they should be, especially free ones. I'm not going to mention any names, but we all know what I'm talking about. And it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily, I think there could be stricter ways of looking at it, but you got to think of how much content they get on a daily basis. Like, it's probably millions of content that's coming in. So they'd have to like,
it's kind of like
there.
YouTube.
Yeah. It's kind of like YouTube. So they'd have to sit there all day and scroll through it. And it's just so much that they probably just can't keep up with it.
I also think porn sites, just to say that, kind of like, they step on some toes. Like, kind of like the stepmom thing is a little weird.
Yeah.
And like how there's always much younger porn stars that look younger than they're supposed to be.
They look like they're 13, but really they're 18.
Yeah. I think it's a little weird that they're doing that. They're kind of like...
catering to pedophiles?
Yeah, kind of.
I will say the way that I think that they could solve it is to make porn not free anymore. Like, make these websites that are free just disappear. Like, you got to pay for it. Because then these people are not fissing to... Because then they'll catch them.
Exactly.
But... I don't work in the porn industry, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah, me neither.
1 out of every 5 victims is a child. In the last 15 years, that number has tripled. So it used to be 1 out of every 10 victims or 15 victims was a child, but now it's 1 out of 5. Women and young girls are used, like I said, as sex trafficking, and then the men are used for labors. However, some boys are used in sex trafficking. Like, they will lure them for that because there is, I guess, a market for that. As crazy as that sounds to say that. There are tons of documentaries and research out there talking about fishing vessels that they use. So, because people probably are wondering, like, how do they get them once they kidnap them? Or they don't always kidnap them. Sometimes they lure them, and we'll talk about that. How are they getting them to other countries? Because usually you have to have like a passport if you're on a plane or something like that. Sometimes they'll use commercial planes where they don't check passports and it's goods and things like that they're shipping. A lot of times they'll use these shipping vessels where, it's either fishing boats or it might be goods that are being transported, and they'll put them in these like containers.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
you could be like it could be in like a truck driver just like carrying something. Could they be in that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are cases where some truck drivers have been in sex trafficking rings, and they've had people in the back of their cars or their trucks.
That is so weird to like drive by and just you don't.
But the fishing vessels, so it's like they go to the marina and they get on an international boat that maybe is going to Asia somewhere, and they're supposed to be transporting fish, but they're also transporting people too. Or they're coming here to America from Asia, Europe, wherever they're coming from. Less than 1% of women and children that are sex trafficked that I mentioned above, the 1% out of that 600 and something thousand, are rescued. Only 1%.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's 1 out of 100 females that are rescued. So that's not enough at all. 80% of sex trafficking victims in the United States are U.S. citizens. So a lot of people think, well, they're coming from other countries and they're not U.S. citizens. They're not, trafficking U.S. citizens or nothing like that. Well, that's completely false, because 80% of them are already here. They're children that are, our neighbors or whatever. The COVID pandemic caused more trafficking and more child pornography to be produced in 2020, because of course kids were at home more, and that's unfortunate. And I understand that we had to be home, especially when it was really bad, but going back into lockdown, that's like one of the things that we don't want to happen. We don't want to go back into lockdown if at all possible, because children really were, especially children that are already in like abusive families, they were being taken advantage of pretty intensely. According to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, in 2016, 27,000 phone calls were made to the crisis hotline. However, in 2016, 150,000 calls were made for animal abuse to the SPCA. So that number needs to go up.
Yeah.
So I understand that dogs, animal abuse is a thing.
Oh,
and dogs, cats, no animal needs to be abused. But the fact that there was only 27,000 calls made to the sex trafficking hotline opposed to 150,000, it's just, those numbers need to be the same to me. Don't be afraid to call if you think that anyone, like, I don't care. I'm one of those people, like, luckily I've never had, well, I take that back. I have had a time, and I'll talk about that in a second, where I had to, like, make sure a kid was going to be okay. But I've never been in a store and seen somebody snatch a kid or nothing like that, where
or the
I would lose it.
Looks, uncomfortable.
Or the kid looks uncomfortable. So here's some of the things that you can look out for. The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime has a list of indicators you can use to help identify victims. These indicators include appearing malnourished, appearing injured or having like physical abuse, avoiding eye contact, social interaction, and avoiding law enforcement, responding in manners that seem rehearsed or scripted, lacking personal identification, like they don't have any ID or they don't really know their name or anything like that, or lacking personal possessions, like they don't have, if you see like a teenage girl, she's like 15, she doesn't have a purse, or she doesn't have normal things that a teenager would have.
So if you see this, I would say,
you could call the hotline.
I would say that too, and then like go up to them and be like, "Hey, do you know your name?" And if they're like, then be like, "Hey, do you want to like come over here and let's look
we
at these
talked about
purses and stuff?"
That girl that got kidnapped, Dugard.
Yeah.
Josie, JC, I can't even remember her name. The first, I know it was Dugard.
I know what you're talking
You know
about,
who I'm talking about. But we did an episode on her, and that's like the campus security guard was like, something just seemed off. Like she wasn't making eye contact. She wasn't really, it just seemed
acting
weird.
like a kid.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't a kid. Remember, she was like older.
Well, yeah.
But she just was acting odd.
Yeah.
And that's something you can do. One time, I won't say where I worked, but I worked with kids. And I had a kid that was telling me all this stuff about his mom and how he didn't want to go with his mom. And he wasn't supposed to be going with his mom somewhere. And she ended up showing up, and she was trying to take him. And she wasn't wrote down as somebody that could take him, but she was still trying to. And I just told, my boss, I was like, look, I've heard some things from this child. So that's the only time I've ever had to, like, be like, yeah, he's not going with her. So I don't figure it out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't any, like, sex trafficking or anything like that. It was just, the mom was just a drug addict. But, still, that's the only time I've ever had to do anything like that. Have you ever had to? Because you've worked with children, too.
Yeah, I've worked with kids. One time there was a kid. He had a black eye, and I asked him how he got it, and he was just like, he sat there for a minute. He was like, "Oh, I fell off my bed," and I was like, and he was like, "Well," and I was like, "Huh, that's weird," and he was like, "Well, no, I was driving my bike and I fell."
Right.
Like he kept like changing the story, and I was like, "Are you Are you
Did you
serious?"
tell your
Like,
boss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, I told my boss, like, keep an eye on him. Like, if another bruise shows up, we need to, like, call somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But another bruise never came up. So maybe he was telling the truth, but he was still kind of like, when his parents came to pick him up, kind of skittish and everything.
So the United States is ranked as one of the worst countries globally for human trafficking. It is estimated that 199,000 incidents occur within the United States every year. That shocked me. And it also, we're going to talk about the different states. Mississippi's on there. As one of the, it's like the top 10 states. Mississippi's one of them per capita of how many
Really?
people we have. It's a pretty high percentage because, we don't have a lot of people here.
Yeah.
So if there's, I don't know.
Big cities.
Yeah.
It's more.
It's more, yeah.
Yeah.
To contact, I did put this in my notes, to contact the hotline to report tips, seek services, or ask questions, you can dial 1-888-373-7888. I'll say that again. It's 1-888-373-7888. For hearing impaired and speech impaired individuals, they should dial 711 when they call. You can also text. You can send an SMS text to 233-733. And you can also do live conversations on their website as well, which I thought was pretty cool. So, there's plenty of ways. And we'll put all that information down below. So if you didn't catch it right now, don't worry about going back and being like, what was the number? We'll put that down below in our description. So there's plenty of options for you to, seek
Contact
somebody.
them.
Yeah. And you can also call the local police too. I
Yeah.
mean, that's also an option. So one of the highest states in the U.S. that has the most sex trafficking or human trafficking is California. They're the highest ranked, and almost every state, almost all 50 of them have problems with sex trafficking or human trafficking cases that are open right now. So victims frequently fall prey to traffickers who lure them in with an offering of food, clothes, attention, friendship, love, seamlessly safe place to sleep, because it is true that some of these kids, some of these teenagers, even women, are maybe in poverty, maybe they don't have the best living situation, but please do not think that that means that suburban areas are not picketed for kids to be snatched off the street, because it's pretty much anybody. After cultivating a relationship with these children and engaging as a false sense of trust, the traffickers will begin engaging in child prostitution and use physical, emotional, or even psychological abuse to keep the children trapped in a life of prostitution. It is common for traffickers to isolate victims by moving them far away from friends and family, altering their physical appearance, or even continuously moving new locations constantly so no one recognizes them. Victims are heavily conditioned to remain loyal to their traffickers. Some of them call them like pimps or daddy or boss or something like that. No child is immune to becoming a victim of sex trafficking, regardless of their age, race, sociological status, or location. And every child involved in this form of commercial sex exploitation is a victim.
It's just weird to think about, like, people are willing to do that. That is just so weird to think about.
Oh, it gets worse.
Like, there are so many people that are like, yeah, let's just get this kid and let him be in the sex traffic. Like, I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah. So, traffickers sexual exploit children through street prostitution. They also work in adult nightclubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel room parties, and hotel room parties. So what that means is that a sex trafficker will have someone that they'll contact, and they'll be throwing like a sex party, and they'll want these children. They'll want certain ages of children. They'll want certain races of children, and they'll take them there. Illegal brothels are also a thing in the U.S. There are quite a few, I believe, in New York and places like that, in big cities, even Texas. Because, it could be something that looks like a... What's the word I'm looking for? Like a massage parlor or like a spa or something like that. But actually in the back, they're...
If you saw kids in the middle of this, like, party or even a massage thing, I think I would be a little like, why is there kids there?
Well,
like,
they
that
don't
would be
actually
weird.
have the kids out until it's ready for that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they, like, put them in a room and...
Yeah, I mean, they're
Wow.
locked up. There's tons of documentaries and research that you can watch. It's not for the lighthearted. Please understand that if you watch these things, you're going to be... You need to have, like, a strong will. I didn't watch all of them, but I did watch, like, some of them, and I would kind of read about the things. In some countries, kids are taken as... Full disclosure, right here. So if what I'm about to talk about with younger children and sexual things bothers you, then you need to skip through this part.
Yeah.
In some countries, kids are taken as early as 3 to 4 years old. Mm. They are sexually abused, raped, groomed, and then they grow up only knowing sex. They don't have any sort of education. They are given drugs constantly to make them in like a zombie-like state, so that way they'll comply and be fine. They are usually raped anywhere between 2 to 3 times a week, and these sessions last anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Then when they are around 13, they're considered women, and so at that point they're able to be sold to adult brothels all over the world, in the U.S., just wherever they have clients that are willing to take these kids.
That's ridiculous. It's like cattle.
Yeah.
It's like freaking cattle. That's sick to my... That makes me sick.
The average amount of money that they believe that, like, the U.S. State Department believes that these sex traffickers make is around, like, not just one certain sex trafficking ring, but, like,
multiple
the
ones.
amount of money that it brings into the U.S., I guess you could say. They believe it's around $85 million.
You think that's the reason why the U.S. is kind of like not looking at it and kind of like...
Oh, no, the U.S. is looking at it. No. Yeah. I mean, the U.S., that's what people don't understand. Like, there's so many people that are like, it's not true. There's people, this didn't really happen in the United States. No, sweetheart. If you go to the U.S. State Department website, you will type in sex trafficking and it'll all pop up for you. Because there's been plenty of people on TikTok and people like that that'll comment and be like, this doesn't really happen in the U.S. You're just saying that. No. You can research it. It's all right there for you.
And yeah, there's been many people come out and be like, yeah, I was in sex trafficking.
Yeah.
No details about things. Like, why would they lie about something like that?
Yeah. EraseChildTrafficking.org, that's one website you can go to, states that 46 children go missing every single day in the United States, and it's due to human trafficking, either for sex trafficking purposes or for labor purposes. Traffickers do not discriminate. Like I told you earlier, they don't care if children are in poor neighborhoods or super rich suburban neighborhoods. It doesn't matter if they're urban or rural. They will pick a child off the street. Now, to say that that happens all the time, like the movie Taken, because some people think of that, like, oh, my kid's going to get snatched off the street if they're... Don't leave your kid outside by themselves. But what I'm saying is that it's kind of like a... I mean, if you want to flip a coin and just hope that your kid's okay on the street by themselves, you can. But I'm not going to do that with my children.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, it's kind of like flipping a coin. Yes, they do steal them from both places. They steal them from poor neighborhoods just as much as they steal them from rich neighborhoods. So don't think just because your family's wealthy, you're immune. We just need to bring a lot of awareness to this. Yeah. EraseChildTrafficking.org also says that many traffickers will operate at airports and transportation hubs because as soon as the child is taken, they will remove them from the spot, like their hometown. They'll remove them from wherever so that way they don't get recognized. So this happens especially a lot in the U.S. where they will, this scenario, they pick up Sally at, in Louisiana. They're going to automatically put her on a plane and fly her all the way out to New York. So no one will know where the hell she's at. No one will recognize her.
If there's a
like
search party for her, like, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only going to take, what is it, 24 hours before they make a search party. So that's... she's already long gone by then.
Yeah, because a lot of these... Now, I'm not saying every person that works at the airport is a sex trafficker.
No.
By no means. Or, you know, a train station or nothing like that. But they do work there. Or they work on shipping yards or somewhere where it's easy for them to ship. Even 18-wheeler, you know, truck drivers. We've talked about that. They do that as well. A lot of people do not believe, like I said, that the U.S. has sex trafficking, but it's kind of done in the shadows because the police, they've caught a lot of people. They've caught a lot of sex trafficking rings. Like, the U.S. State Department has July 9th, 2021, Baltimore sex trafficker sentenced to 10 years in a federal prison for trafficking a minor. Not enough time, in my opinion. He needs to be castrated and killed, but whatever. Yeah. July 1st, 2021, a Tulsa man was sentenced to time after coercing a minor into prostitution. Mm-hmm. And then in Tennessee, on July 13th, that was right after we were there, 18 people were arrested under a sex trafficking investigation ring was found. Like, they did a sting. And that also happened once in Georgia as well. This was in 2020. 39 children were rescued. I remember that. It was last year. And I think it was like in August or something like that. But 39 children were rescued from sex trafficking ring in Georgia. So the information is out there. It's all over the internet. Stop pretending like it doesn't exist and look for yourself because it happens.
If we keep just being like, oh, it doesn't exist, it's just going to get bigger.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just going to get worse. It has gotten worse. I mean, it's only gotten worse since, you know. And it doesn't, I mean, they could be coming from anywhere or they could be going to anywhere. It doesn't really...
I mean, I go to Walmart and there's a whole, like, you've seen it, a whole, almost wall, the entire wall of missing people.
Oh, yeah.
Every single day there's a new face there.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be just, a serial killer? No, it's got to be sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Like, who's stealing all these kids? Like, are these kids just leaving? Like, that just doesn't
I remember
happen.
when I was younger, they had that, but it was like a small, like...
Yeah,
poster
it used
board
to be
area,
really small. It's gotten bigger and bigger. Yeah. Every time you go to Walmart, it's like a whole wall at this point.
Yeah. So police1.com says that traffickers communicate using smartphones, texting apps, voice-over features on the calls, like they'll change their voice. Mm-hmm. They mainly use cash as a form of pay, obviously, because it's not traceable. However, they're starting to use Bitcoin because it's becoming very popular and it's really hard to trace as well. They will also use emails. Now, what they do with the emails is they won't actually send the email. What they'll do is they'll save the email in a draft, and then they will give that person their information to get into their email, and then they'll go to the draft and look at it. So that way it's not being sent over the internet. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is when I say, like, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, what are they sending in these emails? What they're sending is traffickers and even pedophiles. They kind of have their own, like, language to communicate. So they have their own slang words. They have their own codes. They have their own way of saying, you know, I want this age girl for this party, blah, 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 so on and so forth, this type of ethnicity. A lot of people were like, and this is an actual thing, like, a lot of people would say, like, they would use different pizza references.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
They would use different pizza references, and even, they made it a political thing, but honestly, it really did happen, like, in chat rooms and stuff like that. The FBI would, like, go into these chat rooms and try to find these pedophiles that were wanting these kids and stuff, and they would use these references, like cheese pizza would, I don't know, I'm just saying,
guessing, yeah.
Cheese pizza would be like a girl, so they'd be like, I want a two
want
pieces
two
of cheese.
pizzas.
Cheese.
2 large cheese pizzas.
Yeah.
Large would be like, I don't know, 13 or something.
Yeah, or an adult or something like that. You know, I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. That's how they would communicate when they talked about the pizza thing. But there's also other things like I said, they call their pimps. I mean, they call the sex trafficker men, or even some of them are women. Some are men and women that are the boss, I guess you could say. They either call him boss, they call him daddy, they call him their pimp, they call him whatever they want to be called.
So these kids are grooms, so they don't want to escape or anything like that, or if they tried.
So one of the things in the documentary, one of the documentaries that I saw, is actually pretty fucking awful. When the kids got older, they would either try to commit suicide, or they would tell them they wanted to be like raped to death, like just end it because I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And these are like 13-year-old kids, just like Isaac's age girls that just don't want to be it, because they're at that point when they're in brothels, they have clients coming in every single day.
Yeah.
Like, one will come in, give the person the money, do what they want to do with a 13-year-old girl, leave. Another one will come in, give the person the money, do whatever they want to do. So it's just a constant all-day thing.
I don't know what I'd do. I'd lose, if I ever like saw that I'd lose my brain cells. I'd be like grabbing guns, shooting everybody.
Yeah.
Get out of here!
Blow shit up.
Blow shit up. It'd be like taking, just like beating the shit out of people. I couldn't.
It'd be pretty bad, yeah. On July 1st, the U.S. State Department came out and said that the U.S. is the #1 consumer of child pornography. Great job, guys. That the U.S. is also in the top 3 destinations for countries of traffickers bringing victims here, because they are able to make more money, which blows my fucking mind. So if they send them to Europe, Asia, Germany, whatever, I don't know, I'm just saying, they won't make as much money as if they get sent here, because they can up the price. They can charge, Johnny over here I can charge him $100,000 to take little Susie.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go over into another country, I can only charge like $50,000. So they're starting to bring them here more because our prices are higher. They can make more money. New York, Texas, Florida, and California, like I said, are among the top sex trafficking places, which Florida's been that way for a long time. Bless their heart. And I live in the South. And Texas, though, that one kind of threw me. I was like, really? Texas? I guess because it's closer to the border, so it's closer to Mexico.
Oh,
so
yeah.
a lot of these people are taking them over to Mexico,
sense.
or they're bringing them to here from Mexico.
Yeah.
Children. Sometimes children will look as though they are traveling with family members. 9 times out of 10, people just ignore this. Like if they're in the airport, they might, or at a train station or something, they might ignore a screaming child, because let's face it, that happens a lot. Kids scream, kick, and get mad, and
if they didn't get like a lollipop they didn't
sometimes
want.
If they're telling their parents goodbye, they'll be upset. So a lot of people don't pay attention to it. However, I remember back in the day when I was younger, and I do this like even in a store, like I've literally followed a kid just to make sure that was grandma that was with like in a Walmart or something, because I remember when kids would like scream and stuff like that. Like my dad has went up to many of people when I was younger and been like, is everything okay here, or something like that, but people don't do that anymore. People have this mentality that, it's not none of my business, I'm just going to stay out of it. Please don't have that fucking mentality anymore. Like,
I don't care if I get embarrassed. I don't care if I go up there and the dad's like, hey, that's my kid. I'll be like, hey, look, I'm just making sure. You don't know that nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one time, I've told you this story. When I was younger, I was with Isaac, and Isaac was like, I don't know, 1, and I was like 10 or 9 or 11. And we were like in Party City, and y'all were looking at something, and we were looking at something in another aisle. Mm-hmm. And this guy, this older man, was like following us at every aisle. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find y'all, and I kind of panicked, and I kept looking for y'all, and I couldn't find y'all anywhere. And and he was like literally following us. Like every time I got faster, he was faster. So there was one aisle and there was these older people, and I walked up and I was like, hey, I just got up to him and I said, hey, look, that guy's following me. Can I just be like, I know y'all? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, hey, how are y'all doing? And he literally looked, and then he like went away and like walked out the store.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to just walk up to people. If you're a woman or something, you feel like somebody's like following you.
Somebody
just
I
walk
know
up
has
to
done
somebody.
that before too. Was
Yeah.
it you when you were alone in a store?
No, I think that's the only time I've ever done that.
Somebody else I know has done that. They've just walked up to somebody because they were I think they were a teenager, and they were just kind of scared, and they were in Walmart, and they were just like, hey, what's going on? And then they'd be like, hey, this person's following me, can you please, and then
don't be afraid to do that. Just walk up to people and say, hey, I need you to just like talk to me, and this guy's following me. I've seen a lot of TikToks of people doing that.
Yeah. I think you were older though. You were like 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think I was 12 or 13.
Isaac was a little bit older.
He
was like 3 or 4, but
y'all were looking at something, and I was the one that walked away, and I'm sure y'all were freaking out trying to find us.
Yeah, but I mean, we weren't in a huge mall, so I think we found y'all pretty quickly. But, yeah, like, I don't care. Don't worry about being like, oh, I don't want too much attention brought to myself. And sometimes you don't even have to stand there. Like, you could tell a security guard, and then you could be like, please go check this out. And then you could walk off, and they won't even know that you're the one that said anything. So if you want to be anonymous, you could be like, hey, I want to be anonymous, but something's going on over there. Can you please go check this out?
Better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Me, on the other hand, I'm going to stick around because I want to know. Like, but yeah, like she said, better to be safe than sorry. Some abusers and traffickers are operating from neighborhood houses, local businesses, even schools and churches. And they can be men or women, like I said before. So yeah, you even have some people that are working in schools. I mean, they could be like janitors or teachers, or it really does not matter nowadays. I mean, people think, oh, these are just crackheads on the street. No, I mean, they could be literal businessmen that look like they're put together, and they're snatching up kids.
Everybody has a dark side.
Yeah, if we've learned anything from this podcast,
people
you
could
can't
do
trust anybody.
You cannot trust anybody. That is for sure.
And that's why I don't trust anybody with my kids. Like, my kids honestly don't stay at anybody's house that I'm not even lifelong friends with, and I mean like lifelong friends. Like, I've been friends with them since I was 13, or family.
Yeah, because you can't trust anybody.
Yeah, and then I still don't even. Sorry, fam. But sometimes I'm just, especially with my daughter, I'm just like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Can I spend the night at Timmy's house? No, you can't.
Yeah.
You need to stay here with me. Sorry.
So let's talk about for a second, if you are a parent, or if you're someone that has a kid that they love, let's say you're an aunt or an uncle, or even if you have a little cousin, talk to your kids or talk to the kid about sexual abuse and sex trafficking. Little kids. Me and Adeline, my daughter, she's 7, so we've had the conversation before. I've talked to her about sexual abuse, and if you think that's wrong, I don't really care what you think, because...
Well, not in detail, but
No, not in detail, but I've always been like, some things you can say has been like, has anybody ever touched you, no one's allowed to touch you. This always
is your own space.
Emphasize with my daughter, you will never be in trouble. No matter what somebody tells you. If somebody tells you, you can't tell your mommy and daddy because you're going to be in trouble, do not believe them. You will not be in trouble.
Yeah. Just to be aware, some kids think, oh, this is a normal thing. Make them think like, no, this is your body. Mm-hmm. This is you. If somebody does this to you,
own
you
it.
need
no
to,
one else does.
Yeah, you need to speak up. I don't think that's wrong to say that. Kids need to know that.
Yeah. And me and my daughter, we have conversations, and not all the time, but at least probably about every 6 months to 8 months, I'll just remind her. It'll just be a refresher of, hey, remember, no one's allowed to touch you down there. No one's allowed to invade your space, so on and so forth. and we have this long conversation. It's usually just me and her in the car, or it'll just be me and her in a room or something like that, and we'll just be playing, and then I'll bring it up. I don't ever make it like a situation where she seems like she's in trouble or anything like that. It's just a casual conversation, and you definitely need to do that with your daughters or any little girl that, you know, if you're an aunt or uncle, please get permission from their parents first. But stress that that's something that needs to be said. We also talk to Adeline about what she needs to do if she's ever approached by a stranger. And trust me, my daughter talks enough and screams enough, you know.
The people would bring her back. They'd be like, okay. She's like, you're not even doing this right. Like, what? My mom's going to find you. She's going to find you quick because you didn't do this right. He's going to be like, you know what?
Tie this properly. What are you doing?
Just leave. He just throws her out.
No, on all seriousness, I mean, she knows that, like, somebody
she would
walks up
kick
to her
and
in the
scream and
store, just scream, you're not
like,
my daddy, get away.
Yeah.
You know, but also she's never away from me. I keep her by my side at all times. Or she's either with me or she's with Hannah. Like when we went to Tennessee, I'd be like, Hannah, you got her. She'd be like, yeah, I got her.
I put my arm on her when we were walking.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, stop. I was like, no. I don't care. I'm going to keep my arm on you.
She doesn't ever go off with my son. Like at one point, I think we were in a shop and she did go with my son back downstairs, but I watched them and then I made sure he went straight to Hannah or my mom. I think they were both down there because it was like a 2-story shop or something like that. So definitely pay attention. Now, with that being said, I also have an older son that I do talk about things with. I will straight up tell him about sex traffickers. I'll tell him what they're looking for, how they do it, and I don't care. I mean, I'll be like, human trafficking is real. You're old enough to understand what it is now. And for older kids, he's 13. And
he's a teenager.
He's a teenager, so he's well old enough. Like before he went to his dad lives in Texas, and before he went, I was like, you need to watch out for human traffickers while you're there. Don't walk away from your dad and your mother, your stepmother, and so on and so forth. So older kids, it's a little bit more easier to explain. Do I go into detail with him about things? No, I'm not going to tell him about the 4-year-olds and all that, but I do let him know that they will kidnap you for labor and maybe even sex trafficking if they need a male. So,
and I don't think Adeline understands when you tell her, you know, the touching thing and like, that's your body. I don't think she just is like, okay, well, okay. She understands it, but she doesn't know the depth of like.
I thought that, but the last time we
act.
had a conversation, I said, you know, no one's supposed to touch you down there. And she said, well, or look at you or anything like that. And she's like, well, you've looked at me in the shower. And I was like, yeah, because I give you a shower. And she was like, okay. She was like, so I said, but I'm washing your hair. I said, that's different, you know?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, okay, I understand. I was like, yeah. I said, I'm not talking about that. Which now she's getting old enough to where she washed her hair by herself the other day, which I was proud. But, you know, I've still got to wash her hair, so.
Because she doesn't get it. Yeah, my mom used to do that too. No. She's like, God, your hair's oily. Let me wash your hair. Like.
So yeah, she kind of, which I was proud of her for saying that. I was like, okay, well, even if she thinks that it's wrong that I'm in there with her washing her hair, that's a good thing. So a lot of these kids though are lured, like I said, by promises of like, I mean, I don't think they use the candy ruse anymore. But some kids will be like, hey, can you help me find my dog? Or they'll be at the park and they'll be like, hey.
They'll say, your mom and dad's been in an accident. I'm their friends. Like, come with me.
Come with me. That's one that they use a lot too. So yeah, every family has troubles. For this part, I'm going to say every family has troubles. Every parent gets mad at their kids sometimes. But just make sure that you tell your kids how much you love them, because when your kids become 13, 14, 15, if someone else is promising them a happy life or all the things that they want, or because sometimes they'll befriend these kids, especially when they're teenagers, because they know that they're old enough to not be rused by like a dog or some shit like that. So they'll try to befriend them, and it could be somebody that maybe your teenage daughter, she's friends with the older guy that's maybe like 17 or 18. I'm not saying that don't freak out right now if you're listening to this. If she does have a friend like that, that doesn't mean that he's a sex trafficker, but just be cautious, because
he could be like, hey, you want to come over and play video games with me?
Or he could be like, hey, your parents are assholes and they're awful and they treat you like shit and blah 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 blah. But in actuality, every parent screws up. We're not perfect. We're all going to yell at our kids sometimes. We're all going to, the most important thing to do is to, after you've cooled off, go in there and tell them, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any of that, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled like that, or blah, 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 whatever the problem is that you guys are having, and make sure that they understand that you love them and that you don't want them to go anywhere or,
run away
or anything like that, because sometimes even these kids are runaways. I mean, so yeah, just emphasize how much you love them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that's pretty much it. That's the ways that you can talk to your kids about sex trafficking and human trafficking and sexual abuse and all that. And for anybody out there that's like, oh, you don't need to talk to your kids about that, like, we live in a society now where it's everywhere. So if you think that your kid, like my son at 13, if I think for 1 second that he's not looking at boobs or something like that, like,
popped
I
up.
am really naive. So if I think for 1 second that that's not happening, and it doesn't matter even if some people are like, well, don't give your kid a phone, and I'm like, they could see it without having a phone. They could see it at school. There's kids at school that have phones, and they'll be looking at it in the bathroom or something like that. So,
or the kids will literally be like, hey, look at these boobs.
Yeah,
like it's gonna happen.
So don't be naive to think that.
Back then, we all the time kids would do that when I was like 13 or 12, like, hey, look at these tits, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
they would do that randomly. Like, kids are just like that.
Oh yeah. So don't think for 1 second that kids need to be kids do need to be sheltered to a certain extent. But in this day and age, it's pretty bad.
Let them be aware.
I mean, shit, they can even look at remember that commercial, that Venus commercial that we saw at the cabin?
At the cabin.
We don't have commercials because we only use like streaming networks. So there was a commercial that my husband was like, what the fuck? And it was a woman, she was shaving like the inside of her leg. And yeah, she had on a bikini, but like, really? I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. It was like, whoa.
Yeah. I was like, okay, this is on regular TV. So yeah, just don't be naive. And also, if you see anything about what we talked about any child or woman or male or boy or anything like that, appearing malnourished, no eye contact, no social interaction, trying to avoid law enforcement, injuries or physical abuse, anything like that, just contact the hotline, and we'll put the number down below. You can also contact your local police department if you need to, or if there's like a security guard in the premises. Maybe you're at an airport or you're at a train station or something like that, and something just seems off. You can go to the security guard. Just don't let it go by. Get involved. Like, don't be scared to get involved, because
I mean, if I even had a kid and he was throwing a fit and somebody came up to me and was like, hey, like, talking to the kid. I have
had somebody do that before.
Yeah.
With,
like, what are you doing?
It was with Isaac. He was screaming in the buggy or something like that. We were somewhere. It was me and Mom and him. And somebody was just like, hey, little buddy, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, he's fine. He's just mad because he wanted something or something like that. I
wouldn't really be offended, because I'd be like, I understand, like, you want to make sure that he's not abused or anything. I'll just explain, and I'll let him, like, yeah, why are you mad, Timmy? I'm mad because I didn't get my candy, see?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be mad about it. And if anybody was mad, fuck them. We're going to check. We want to make sure. There's so much stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, a lot of times,
aware.
you can't just ask the sex trafficker if that's what it is. be like, oh, what's wrong with him? You know, they're going to be like, oh, he's, you know, doesn't want to get on this plane or something like that. Like, they're going to come up with a good excuse, and they're going to seem really like they're, that person's father or dad or something, mother or dad or something like that. So, yeah, I would always just I would say just get a security guard. Like, you could go up and ask yourself, but they're probably good enough to manipulate you to the point where you're not gonna, you know, be able to tell. But most of the time, either a security guard or some sort of police force will be able to tell, like, something's off. Unless you're really good at spotting things that are off, then you might be able to.
Yeah.
And then again, you know, little Timmy might be like, this is not my dad, or something.
Yeah.
Or Susie might be like,
go up to the
help
kid,
me.
be like, are you all right? And if
Yeah.
they're like, they might be like, actually, no, I'm not okay.
Yeah. So anyways, yes, a lot of heavy things that we've talked about today, but that's where we're going to end it. So be sure, you know, it's just awareness. It needs to be raised. More awareness needs to be raised for all this. It's not enough. It's not out there enough. Like, it's really not.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that how they trafficked them, like how they ship them. That's weird. Mm-hmm. Like, even like a truck. Like, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. That makes me feel weird. Like, every time I see a truck, I'm gonna be like, looking in, like, what's in there?
So you know the weigh stations for truck drivers. You know where they have to go in and do the weighing.
Yeah.
So that's what they started doing. They started doing it years ago for drug purposes, like they could smuggle like cocaine and stuff over the border and stuff like that. But now they're also doing it for human trafficking. So what happens is one weigh station, your truck might weigh, I have no idea how much truck weighs, but let's just say, like, I don't know, 50,000 pounds or something. So if your truck weighed 50,000 back there, up here at this weigh station, you didn't pick anything up. It doesn't show that you picked anything up on your computer or paperwork or whatever they use now. Mm-hmm. But at the next weigh station, your truck weighs 150,000. Yeah. What the fuck is in your truck? Open it up and want to see what's in your truck.
That's good.
So that's what they do.
It's good that they do that.
I will say one thing before, and I forgot to mention this. One of the things that people are asking right now not to do, this happens a lot in the South. I don't know if this happens a lot in the North or in the West or anything like that, because it's probably not in the North. We're really friendly in the South. Not to say that y'all are not in the North.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really bad, but I'm saying we're so friendly to the point that if we see a police officer, we're going to flip our lights at the person coming down the other way because we want them to know there's a police officer up there, slow down. Yeah. If you're speeding, we're trying to help you out. Don't do that anymore, because people are saying that if you flash your lights at the oncoming car, you never know if that's somebody that could have somebody in their car that they're trafficking, and the smallest little mistake that they make could lead the police officer to catch them. Yeah. So they could speed, and if they're speeding, the police officer can pull them over and be like, you know, check them out and see what's going on. So just don't flash your lights anymore. I know that's a thing that we do here in the South for sure, to be like, you know, courteous. Yeah. Like, hey, slow down, there's a cop up there.
I've literally had that happen before. Like, yeah. I've been driving and like the lights flash and I'm like slowing down, and then there's a cop. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It sucks that we don't need to do that anymore. Yeah. But and I can say that because my brother's a police officer, or best friend. So yeah, I mean, it sucks that but that's how they're doing it. I mean,
yeah,
they're slowing down. They're doing everything they're supposed to. They make sure they got their seatbelts on. They're not speeding, all that, so they don't get pulled over. But if they're speeding and they go past the cop can pull them over and maybe catch somebody. So, all right. Well, anywho, now that we've talked about all that, we will see you guys next week. Don't forget to go to our Instagram, and you can go over to the Etsy shop, Levi Royce, and then snatch you some awesome leather stuff. Earrings. The earrings are really pretty, and I love the wallet. I've been using the wallet like crazy.
I like walking around and smelling leather every once in a while.
So good.
God, it smells so good. I'm like, oh, what's that smell? Oh, that's me.
All right, well, I hope that you guys have a great weekend, and yeah, if you see anything, you know, call the hotline. We'll have all that linked down below, but we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.